tutorial will take you through how to take a broad topic for your project-based research and turn it into a research question. So you might be wondering, why in the world do I have to write a research question? Why can't I just dive into my research? Well, at the end, you don't want your research project to just be a list of random facts or to just be a report on somebody. You want this topic, you want this project to be focused, and you want it to be focused on an issue that is going to interest your readers and that's going to contribute to a larger issue that society is dealing with. So how do you begin? The first thing you should do, if you haven't started already, is to list some broad topics that interest you. These topics need to be related to your class, to your CTE class. But, other than that, just think about like things that you've wondered about in your class, things that you're curious about. Maybe there's a region that you'd like to travel to in the world, and you can apply, something like your fashion design class or your culinary class. Maybe you can apply something from your class to that region that you'd like to travel in the world. Maybe there's a topic that you've touched on in another class and you would like to delve deeper into that topic. So just think about like really broad topics that interest you. And once you've got a list of some of these topics, start reading some articles on that topic. And at this point where you're still kind of brainstorming, it's okay to go to Wikipedia and just get some background knowledge about your topic. Go to Apple News and see what you can find. Browse some of the news sites like AP or Reuters or the New York Times Magazine or NPR, just to see like what the current news and the current topics are on that, or the trends on that topic. Check some blogs even and see what they have to say about your topic. And then also listen to some podcasts if you can find some. There are some, lots of good TED Talks out there. That's not just listening, but watching. But there are good TED Talks out there. And then also NPR has a lot of good podcasts on lots of different topics. So listen to podcasts if you can. We also recommend that you look up articles in our library databases. Just log into MacAnvia. You log in, both your student ID, like your user ID, and your password are your student ID number without the S. So your S number without the S for both your user ID and password for MacAnvia. And then once you get in there, click on the tab for databases, and then you'll pull up just lots of different databases. There are databases for different fields. Like, for example, there's a database for US history. There's another one for world history. There's one for health. I think there's one in there for the environment, like environmental issues. And then just do a search in there and it'll pull up articles on your topic. And then discuss your topic with your friends and your family and your teacher. Just tell them, I'm thinking about doing my research project on blah, blah, blah. And people will, hopefully have a nice discussion with you. Some people, the cool thing about discussing your project with like friends or family is that they might say, oh, that's really interesting. I just read, an article that talked about blah, blah, blah. Or, your parents might say, yeah, I just heard this, news story on NPR about blah, 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 that has to do with your topic. And that can, give you more ideas about what you can do with your topic, or maybe take you off, on a tangent into this other area that maybe you hadn't thought about before. So it's really important that you discuss your topic with everybody that you can. Now, once you have a topic, like a broad topic that you are interested in, there are ways that you can narrow that down. Often when we're brainstorming for topics, really what we have is just kind of a broad topic, but we need to narrow things down better. So this exercise can help you narrow that down. So start off, number one, by writing down your topic, just your broad topic. And then after that, circle the main words in the topic, and then try to narrow those words down by shrinking it down to like a specific time period, or a specific place or geographic region, or focus on a specific population, or maybe there are different viewpoints that you can approach the topic through. So here's an example on the history of commercial aviation. Okay, maybe you're taking the aviation class and you're interested on doing something on the history of commercial aviation. Well, that's a really broad topic. And so what you want to do is circle the main words there and then try to think more deeply about those and how you can narrow them down. So time period. So history, like just broadly history, that's a lot. That encompasses a lot, a large time period there. So when you're talking about commercial aviation, maybe you can talk about like just those early years when commercial aviation began and when it started to gain popularity and people started offering rides to like regular people. So, you can focus that down by that time period. Place. Maybe there's one region in the country, in the U.S., like I'm assuming, that this is the U.S. Maybe you want to focus on another country and how commercial aviation came to be popular in that country. Here in the U.S., is there a particular region that was more where commercial aviation gained traction faster than others? Like when the Wright brothers, this isn't commercial aviation, but like when the Wright brothers chose to do some of their test flights, they went down to North Carolina and they picked a specific spot, this specific beach, because they knew that it was always windy there. The place where they were from, I forget exactly where they're from, there wasn't a lot of wind there. So they went to a different region of the U.S. to actually test their airplanes, their first airplanes, their prototypes. So anyway, place, you can narrow it down. Population, who are some of the people who made important contributions to, the beginning of commercial aviation? And viewpoints. When you read up on this topic, you'll see that the military had a big influence on commercial aviation. So maybe that's what you want to focus in on. And one of the early commercial airplanes was the DC-3. So you can really narrow this topic down, instead of just broad general history of commercial aviation. A more narrow topic would be the contribution of the military on the development of the DC-3 in the early years of commercial aviation. And you could even be more specific because this is a U.S. military. Maybe in other countries, the commercial aviation developed differently. Maybe there was a different approach to it rather than the military, rather than like people using older military planes to take people on flights. So anyway, this can help you narrow down your topic by thinking about time, place, population, and viewpoint. If it's easier for you, though, if you don't like the time, place, population, viewpoint, you can also think about the who, what, where, when, and why. And this next example will use those instead. So in this example, let's say I'm in the fashion class and I'm really interested in the traditional clothing of Guatemalans. They wear very, very colorful clothing in Guatemala, and the indigenous people there have really, really stuck to wearing their traditional clothing. It's almost a form of protest, like they're not going to capitulate and do everything that the white settlers wanted them to do. Instead, they've kept to the traditional clothing and the traditional textiles there. So a lot of people have, not everybody. So anyway, here's an example of how to narrow things down by the who, what, where, when, and why, instead of the time, place, population, viewpoint. So, okay, thinking about traditional clothing in Guatemala, the who, you could focus specifically on indigenous Maya women. There are other indigenous populations there, but the Maya people are the ones who are the largest indigenous population there. And maybe you want to focus on men instead of women. So that's the who. The what, there can be lots of whats. In this case, instead of just traditional clothing, notice traditional clothing is one of the main phrases here. That can be narrowed down by just the dresses that women wear. You can also look at hat wear. You can look at the pants that men wear. You can look at footwear. So traditional clothing, we can narrow that down by the traditional dresses that the women wear. And then another what can be the role that color plays in the patterns. What does color signify? I've met people down in Guatemala, and those colors do signify certain things. So what role does color play in the patterns of these of their clothing? And then the where, notice up here, we very broadly said Guatemala in the beginning, but when you think about the where, there are specific regions that you could focus on within a country. And Guatemala in particular is divided up into different regions. They call them departments, and Sololá is one of the ones that's around one of the really popular lakes there. So maybe this person could focus specifically on that department of Sololá. And then the when, I would have a question here, how much has the clothing changed over the years? Do the indigenous people there still wear the same kinds of clothing that they wore when the white settlers arrived, when the white invaders arrived? How has that changed? Or how have their techniques changed? Maybe they use more sewing machines now to make their clothing than they used to do back, 100 or 200 years ago. And then why? You can, wonder, why do the different regions wear different clothing? There is some history there when people invaded the country, and why the different regions wear different clothing. So you can pick, from any of these and come up with a more narrow topic, but the ones I chose were the who, and the what, to focus in on the question. And I came up with, what role does color play in the patterns used in the traditional dresses worn by indigenous women in Guatemala? And we could make this more specific by focusing on a specific region if the different regions, use color differently. Or you could do a comparative analysis where you can compare the role that color plays in one region versus another region. That would be another way to narrow this down. But this exercise will help you really hone in on a more narrow topic. So once you've picked a more narrow topic, you do need to think about the so what, especially for these CTE courses and the presentation that you're going to be doing at the very end. You do need to think about, will your audience care about the topic that you picked? For example, you might have curiosity and, this intellectual curiosity, and you might wonder, why do cats rub their faces against our legs? Like, why do they do that? That is an interesting question, but when you're, researching this and writing a paper on it, does it really matter? Are people really going to be dying to read that research paper? If they don't even like cats, they might not even care. So when you're thinking about your topic, you do need to think about the so what question, and you do need to think about, how does this contribute to a larger body of research? Is this helping to solve a bigger problem, or is this leading to a better understanding of a larger issue? So if you answered, yes, people will care about your topic, then you need to start thinking about how you're going to phrase this, in the form of a research question. And this little exercise will help you with that. It's another 3-step exercise. So from this one, you're going to take your topic and you're going to do 3 things with it. The first thing you want to do is just state your topic. So you're going to start off by saying, I want to learn about, or I want to work on, or I want to study, and then you're just going to list what you want to study. So I gave you 2 different examples here. So number 1, I want to work on finding the causes of worker shortages in the construction industry in Austin, Texas. That's a good narrow topic right there. And then B, I want to learn about how Mexican cuisine has influenced traditional Texan foods. Again, that's a good narrow topic. So here, just state your topic and what you want to learn about, what you want to work on, what you want to study. So then for the second step, what you want to do is you want to add what you don't know or what you don't understand about the topic. So you can phrase that as, because I want to find out who or what or when or where or whether or why or how. You figure out how you want to state that. So for our examples here, remember A was the construction worker shortage here in Austin, Texas. So for A, the because might want to be, because I want to find out how general contractors can find more workers to fulfill demand. So that tells you, why you want to learn about this, or what you don't understand yet, and you want to learn more about. So the example B was about Mexican cuisine influencing Texas foods. So B could be, because I want to know how the intermingling of different people affects regional cuisine. So here you're just stating what you don't know or what you don't understand yet about a certain topic. And then number 3, you're going to answer that so what question. Remember we talked about so what, why should your reader care about this topic? So you're going to start that off by phrasing, in order to help my reader understand, and then you fill in the blank. So remember A is about construction worker shortages in Austin, Texas. So you could say, in order to help my reader understand why there's a shortage of new construction in the Austin area. So, why would your reader care about a construction worker shortage in Austin? Well, because there's a shortage of new construction. Or maybe the answer here is, maybe this will help explain why there's a housing shortage in general, and why that leads to the rising cost of homes or the rising cost of rent. I mean, that's something that affects all of us, right? We're either, excuse me, you may not have to worry about it, but maybe your parents do, about the rising cost of rent and the rising cost of homes in the area if you're wanting to buy a home. Readers will care a lot about that. Or then in B was our Mexican cuisine influencing Texas cuisine. So maybe the answer here would be, in order to help my reader understand how Mexican cuisine has influenced food that we consider solely Texan. So there's no right or wrong answer here, but really, and there could be multiple answers here, multiple reasons why your readers would care. But what this will do is get you to at least think about, why anyone would care about this topic. So the reason we do that is because once you write these things down, then you can form your research question, right? So our example A about construction workers I want to work on finding the causes of worker shortages in the construction industry in Austin, Texas, because I want to find out how general contractors can find more workers to fill demand in order to help my reader understand why there's a shortage of new construction in the Austin area. So really the first two parts, those help frame the research question. So you can take those two and frame it as a question, and you can ask, what are the causes of construction worker shortages in the Austin area? And what can general contractors do to find more workers? So this one happens to be a two-part question, okay? There are two things that we're trying to find there. We're trying to determine what the causes are, and then we want to come up with a list of suggestions for general contractors. The third part there, about helping your reader understand why, you don't need to include that part in your research question. But because you have that now, that will help you once you start writing your paper and putting your presentation together. That can be your introduction. That can be the hook that helps your readers be interested in what you're about to say. Here's our second example, the one about Mexican cuisine influencing Texan foods. So I want to learn about how Mexican cuisine has influenced traditional Texan foods because I want to know how the intermingling of people from different ethnic backgrounds affects regional cuisine in order to help my reader understand how Mexican cuisine has influenced food that we consider solely Texan. So if you look at this, the third part is very similar to the first part, and that's okay. That's totally fine. And the second piece can be, you can pick that, you can use that to form your research question, or you can stick with, the first part. The research question I came up with here was mostly based on the first part of this exercise, which was, how has Mexican cuisine influenced the foods that we consider solely Texan? And this might even be too broad, I don't know, but maybe, for a whole year project, it would be fine. But, these cuisines are pretty broad, and so you might want to narrow that down even further. But I just wanted to walk you through this exercise, to get you to see how you can take these things and then form your research question around those by picking these out and just phrasing them as a question. So that previous exercise walked you through stating what you're researching, what you don't know about it, and why your reader should care about it. And again, that third part, you don't need to include it in your research question, but you definitely want to include it in probably your introduction when you start writing your research paper or when you start putting your presentation together. So a few words of advice before we leave here. Read a lot on your topic. Be curious about it and just, read everywhere you can find online, blog posts, look up database articles, see what you can find on your topic. And then also listen to podcasts, watch TED Talks, read news stories, listen to news stories. Just find as much information as you can about your topic. Secondly, discuss your research topic with other people, including your teacher. And your teacher can probably give you more ideas or help you narrow things down. Remember that the first draft of your research question is probably not going to be your last, and that's okay. Research is a constantly evolving process, and reading things, gets us to think about more questions and further research. As you're reading articles and listening to stories, researchers will often talk about, what they researched, and then at the end, they might state, ideas for further research. So that's where you can get ideas, talk them over with people, and just keep reframing your research question until you find just the right one. not too broad, not too narrow, but just right. And then make sure that you pick a topic that interests you. You don't want to pick something that is not interesting. If you're going to be spending months on this, you want to pick something that you find interesting. So good luck. Come to us in the library if you have any questions, and we'll be more than happy to help you out.